In this report, I answer the question, why you should leave the USA before the Philippines open. I started thinking about this today. You see, we will be done touring Central America in just a few months, so we need to decide where to go next. In 2020, we were in the middle of touring the Philippines when the pandemic put us in lockdown. We were locked down in the Philippines for about 8 months. There are about 15 more places in the Philippines we need to see before we pick our favorites, so we need to go back. Even if you are dead set on retiring in the Philippines, there are several good reasons you should explore other countries while you wait for the Philippines to open. That is what I will talk about in this video. First, I want to explain why I think several other parts of Southeast Asia are likely to open 3 to 6 months before the Philippines. Second, I've been thinking, should we head over to Southeast Asia before the Philippines open? Finally, I will explain why you should leave the USA before the Philippines open. Okay, here we go. I will show you pictures I took traveling. We travel the world and write retired chief reports in paradise. We have been waiting for the Philippines to open so we could finish our tour of the Philippines. We have over 100 reports on vagabondbuddha.com that teach how and where to retire early for cheap all over the world, including Mexico, Central America, South America, Asia, and Eastern Europe. Why most of Southeast Asia will open before the Philippines. In general, all of Asia has had many fewer deaths per capita during the pandemic. Personally, I think it's because they have had much more experience managing dangerous viruses over the last few decades, like the avian flu and others. Western countries have just had much less experience fighting viruses when compared to Asia. Each Asian country will decide when to open to tourists when they feel their hospitals will not be overrun with new cases. Many will make that decision based upon at least 2 metrics: reaching a low number of new cases per day, reaching a high percentage of vaccination in their population. As of today, only about 24% of the Philippines population has been vaccinated, whereas Malaysia has 67%, Cambodia has 69%, Vietnam has 12%, and Indonesia has about 20% vaccinated. So if the Philippines focus on their new cases and vaccination rates, it could take another 6 to 12 months to open. But other new factors are being watched around the world. Recent studies are confirming that vaccinated people spread the Delta virus 65% slower than unvaccinated people. All of these things I'm explaining have links. You can go read the source material if you like. You'll just have to click the link in the notes below this video. Anyway, this study that shows the 65% slower spread, that metric suggests that vaccinated tourists may be substantially safer to allow entry into individual countries. So if these studies hold true, many governments may begin allowing vaccinated tourists first in order to offset some of the economic and social devastation created by the complete denial of tourism over the last few years. This pressure to open sooner will be even greater in countries with economies that depend heavily on tourism, such as the Philippines. In that case, the Philippines may open sooner than expected, possibly by the spring of 2022 or even earlier. But if the Philippines continue to depend only on new case counts and high vaccination rates in their population, then it may not open until September of 2022. This is just an estimate, of course. So that creates a question in my mind. Should I tour around Southeast Asia while I wait for the Philippines to open? Here is my current thinking on that. Chung and I will move back to Southeast Asia and tour around that part of the world as soon as 3 countries in Southeast Asia are open to us. We'll head over there even if the Philippines is not open yet. Let me explain. What I'm about to tell you changes every few days or weeks, so you need to verify the present status of these facts before you fly to Southeast Asia, no matter when you fly. Here's what I mean by when 3 countries in Southeast Asia are open to us. 3 countries are not open in Southeast Asia now. Here's what I mean. Americans are able to go to Thailand right now on the sandbox visa. I'm American. You have to jump through some hoops to do it, but I have had friends go to Thailand over the last few months. You can also go to Cambodia if you are willing to jump through some hoops and quarantine upon arrival. Bali says it will open to tourists soon, and I have another friend that went there recently. So countries are slowly opening in Southeast Asia finally. But of these three, I would only categorize Thailand as open right now on the sandbox visa. The other two require some form of quarantine in a hotel room when you arrive for a week or two. We are all different in what we are willing to do in order to be let into a country. For me, I define a country to be open if I can go with only a vaccine and a negative test. I'm presently unwilling to quarantine at this time. So under my definition of open, there are not yet 3 countries open in Southeast Asia. You'll have to decide what hoops you're willing to jump through. Under the present entry requirements, it is still impossible to tour around Southeast Asia right now without doing quarantines. So I have been unwilling to fly halfway around the world to explore Southeast Asia so far. Because once I go, I want to be able to spend at least a year touring around Southeast Asia so I can amortize the cost of the flight over there over a longer period of time. When 3 countries are open to us in Southeast Asia, we will fly there. I suspect that before the end of 2021, there will be at least 3 countries in Southeast Asia that will be open according to my definition before the end of 2021. I will go once there is at least 3 countries in Southeast Asia that require only proof of vaccination and or a negative COVID test. That is why we are still in Latin America. Okay, I promised to explain why you should leave the USA before the Philippines open. Well, here we go. Why you should leave the USA before the Philippines open. Number 1, you'll hit the wall in the Philippines. When you first live overseas, you'll hit a psychological wall sometime in the first 3 to 9 months. If you haven't already lived outside your home country for more than a year, you're likely to hit a wall when you first live internationally. It's not just the Philippines. It will happen in most other countries too. Everything is going to seem very odd to you for the first 3 to 9 months. If you're like me, you will constantly be asking yourself, why don't they do this as we do it at home? Why are things so different here? Why can't I get my favorite food? Why can't I just live my old routine? If you go straight to the Philippines or any other country without first living in other countries, you'll begin to think that the Philippines are an odd place. But if you take some time to tour around other countries before you enter the Philippines, you'll understand that it is really just the chaos of change that bothers you, not the Philippines. You just miss your comfort zone. So if you spend a few months touring around Southeast Asia before you go to the Philippines, you'll be much more adapted to the chaos of change, and you'll be less likely to prematurely give up on the idea of international living. Without that reference point, you might just end up going home within a year or so. But that is okay too, if you can afford all the long distance flights. But after being home for about 6 months, you'll likely wish you were back in the Philippines or whatever other country you love most. So you can save a bunch of money and time by just touring around Southeast Asia or another part of the world for a few months before heading to the Philippines. The funny thing is, about 3 months after returning home prematurely, you'll miss many of the quirky or weird things that annoyed you the most while living overseas. And many things you missed most while you were away from home will not seem as fun as you remembered. If you're like me, you'll be bored at home within a few months and you'll start planning your escape again. This is what happened to me when I tried moving back to the USA. I was gone again within 6 months. What are some of the other reasons you should leave the USA before the Philippines opens? Okay, number 2, you may be able to meet your Filipino lover sooner. This only applies to people with long-distance lovers in the Philippines or any other country. It is very possible that vaccinated Filipinos will be allowed to leave the Philippines and fly to other parts of Southeast Asia before you are allowed to fly into the Philippines. That could very easily happen over the next few months. If another country in Southeast Asia opens sooner than the Philippines, that is very likely, in my opinion. So if you're touring around Southeast Asia and your Filipino lover is allowed to fly somewhere that opens before the Philippines, you'll be able to meet them in person sooner. That is likely to happen sooner than if you wait for the Philippines to allow your entry. The Philippines has not allowed their citizens to leave the Philippines yet at the time of this report in most circumstances. But when other Southeast countries open to tourists, you may be able to meet your Filipino lover sooner. That's just my opinion. Okay, number 3, they may change the rules in the Philippines. Countries change their rules periodically. If the rules stay the same in the Philippines when they finally reopen to tourists, you'll be able to get extensions on your tourist visa for up to 36 months before you need to do a visa run or fly to another country. So after 36 months of tourist extensions, you'll need to fly to another nearby country to reset your tourist visa stamp in the Philippines. But if the Philippines changes its visa rules, you may need to leave the country more often. People are talking about the rule changes, but other rule changes have already been made and not that one. It will be easier for you to pick where to go in Southeast Asia if you've already toured around Southeast Asia before going to the Philippines. You may have heard about all of the people that were leaving Thailand a few years ago. If they had toured around other countries in Southeast Asia before they decided to live in Thailand, they would have a better idea of where they want to move next if they had done some touring around first. Okay, number 4, you will need a break from time to time. The truth is, we all need a break from normal life from time to time. If you learn about some of your favorite places around other parts of Southeast Asia or the world, you'll be able to take vacations from your vacation every once in a while. You can often fly to other very beautiful parts of Southeast Asia for a few $100s per person round trip. This may also be a great way to show your new love another part of Southeast Asia they have never traveled to before. Travel is a great way to bring romance back into your daily routine and love life. Okay, number 5, variety is the spice of life, and travel is the biggest spice. If you're like me, you'd probably be curious about the other countries around you, even if you decide to settle in one country in Southeast Asia. Personally, I think variety is the spice of life, but not everyone is like me. But if you are, you'll want to take periodic vacations from your new life. So why not start by getting to know some of the surrounding countries before you settle down in the Philippines? Knowing that you dated other countries before you fell in love and moved to the Philippines will help give you confidence in the decision you made to settle in the Philippines. Next, I explain the largest spice of life, possibly, serendipity. 6, serendipity may happen to you if you tour Southeast Asia. It was just by mere coincidence that I met 𝗙𝐿 in Malaysia. I had done my share of touring all around Southeast Asia, and I had fallen in love with most of it and Thailand back in 2016. But I needed to do a visa run so I could get my Thai tourist visa renewed. So I flew to Penang, Malaysia. I enjoyed Penang, Malaysia, so I decided to check out Kuala Lumpur. I thought both cities in Malaysia were beautiful and very modern and organized as compared to other parts of Southeast Asia. But they didn't seem to be as fun as Thailand. So I was planning to head back to Thailand after touring around Malaysia for a few months. But then I met 𝗙𝐿 while I was in Kuala Lumpur. I was having a bunch of fun getting to know her better. So I decided to tour around Malaysia periodically between my visits to KL, where 𝗙𝐿 lived at the time. I spent much of 2016 and 2017 in KL getting to know 𝗙𝐿 better. I eventually loved Malaysia as much as Thailand, but it was mainly because I started seeing Malaysia through the eyes of 𝗙𝐿. So you need to be open to serendipity. Let your life unfold naturally and give serendipity a chance. Try not to force everything to fit into your expectations. Okay, number 7. You may like another country more than the Philippines. If you tour around 3 or 4 other countries before the Philippines open, You just may find that you like another country more than the Philippines. Your favorite place in the world that fits your lifestyle and needs is a very personal thing. You can increase your chances of ending up at the right place if you take your time and date a few countries before picking the country you want to marry and live happily ever after with. Seeing Southeast Asia with your own eyes may increase your chance of picking the right country. Okay, number 8, you may have to move someday. Whatever country you pick to live, such as the Philippines, could eventually experience economic or political unrest someday. This one has a low likelihood of happening, but I will mention it just in case. Many countries have periods of economic and political unrest. At such time, political leaders often scapegoat foreigners as being the cause of systemic problems. If things get ugly wherever you are living in the world as a foreigner, you're going to want to get out of the country at least until things cool down. If you have spent time in various countries in the region, you may have learned of a favorite nearby country you would like to move to temporarily or permanently when trouble arises. If you have toured around the region before this happens, you'll have a better idea of where you want to go next. The truth is, in 14 plus years of slow traveling the world, nothing remotely approaching this level of economic or political unrest has ever happened anywhere in the world where I was living at the time. I've even lived through 2 military coups in Thailand, and foreigners were never targeted by politicians. So this is more theoretical, but it is good to know the lay of the land around you, just in case. Okay, those are my top 8 reasons why you should leave the USA before the Philippines open. This is Dan of Vagabond Awake, the YouTube channel for vagabondbuddha.com. Make sure to stop by vagabondbuddha.com and get a free copy of my ebook, How I Fired My Boss and Traveled the World for 14 plus years. The world is your home. What time will you be home for dinner? Hey, if you liked our video, please like, comment, or subscribe. Any of that would help our business. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Click the link in the notes below this video to get a copy of this content. Plus, grab a free copy of my ebook, How I Fired My Boss and Traveled the World for 13 Years. While you're there, check out our catalog of retired cheap reports all over the world and our hobby income course that we just released. Thanks so much.